Fired by the CEO, this single dad janitor discovered an incredible path to life-changing hope. Jake stared at the "dismissed" sign on his office door. Unbelievably heavy silence echoed through the high school corridors where he had poured years of his life. How had everything changed in an instant? The bitter sting of losing his job as the janitor, a role he wore like a badge of honor, filled his chest with a tightness he hadn't felt before. He had always believed his work made a difference. Keeping these hallways clean meant a safe space for kids like Lucas, his 16-year-old son, who dreamed of going to college one day. But now, all those dreams felt like they were crumbling at his feet. Walking through the flickering fluorescent lights, memories flooded back. Late-night mopping sessions, Lucas giggling as he helped, playing with the mop like it was a sword. Jake smiled faintly. Those moments felt so far away now, drowning beneath the growing tide of bills and the haunting fear of failure. The thought of disappointing Lucas sent waves of despair crashing over him. He couldn't let that happen. Then, his heavy footsteps led him to a small group of students huddled together, whispering in a corner of the empty gym. Misfits, he thought. They wore looks of confusion and struggle on their faces, much like his own. Jake felt an unexpected spark. They didn't judge him. Instead, there was a shared rumble of emotions. He recognized their longing, a mirror reflecting his own fight against life's relentless challenges. Driven by a sudden surge of purpose, Jake organized free tutoring sessions, turning his pain into a lifeline for the lost kids around him. Week after week, they came together, sharing laughter, knowledge, and hard-earned lessons. Each gathering breathed life back into the community. The struggle was real, yet together they built a sense of belonging that Jake had thought was lost to him. Even the local veterans and their families began to notice, nodding with respect, whispering encouragement, though some still labeled him as just the janitor. At the height of this newfound connection, a vibrant community fair lit up the town square one sunny Saturday. Music played, laughter filled the air, and just as Jake felt the solid ground beneath his feet again, Lucas approached him. He wore a nervous smile, holding his phone tightly. "Dad, I want to show you something," he said, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Before Jake could say another word, Lucas hit play, unveiling a heartfelt video. Within moments, their shared moments, the struggles, fears, late-night talks came alive on screen. The crowd roared with joy, inspiring cheers rising above the idyllic hustle and bustle, but overlapping those cheers were sneers from a few who still struggled to see beyond his janitorial role. In that intense moment, Jake's heart raced with a mix of pride and anger. He whispered to himself, "I can't let this define us," and the shadows of doubt began to shift. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue with newfound courage. Jake sought out the CEO who had disrupted his life. It was time to stand up and demand respect, a challenge not just for himself, but for the countless faces he represented. The air around them buzzed with anticipation, hearts pounding, breaths held. His moment tethered between failure and redemption loomed. Would they finally see him, the man behind the mop, the father clawing for a better future? Jake's pulse quickened as he stepped forward, ready to fight not just for himself, but for Lucas, and for every overlooked soul struggling to rise. Jake stood outside the CEO's office, his heart racing. The heavy wooden door loomed in front of him, a barrier between the past and the uncertainty of the future. He took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun on his back. This was it. This was his moment. As he twisted the doorknob and entered, the CEO's gaze met his, an icy wall of indifference. "What do you want?" the CEO asked, dismissive. The word stung, but Jake wasn't there to be weakened. "I want to talk about my dismissal," Jake replied, finding strength in his voice that he didn't know he had. "I want to explain what I've been doing since." The CEO leaned back in his chair, eyebrows raised, clearly unimpressed. Go ahead. Make your case, he said, already looking bored. With each word, Jake painted a picture of the community he had sparked around him. He spoke of late nights filled with laughter, and the hope he was molding into the lives of struggling kids. Kids who felt seen for the first time, who now believed they could achieve their dreams. A resurgence that breathed life back into the school. Being a janitor was never just about mopping floors. It was about making this place a sanctuary for kids like Lucas, he asserted, his voice rising with passion. That's nice, but it still doesn't change what you did. The CEO interrupted, his tone sharp. Jake's heart sank for a moment, but then he thought of Lucas, of the kids he had helped. No, what it does is show how much you don't understand. Losing my job was just a spark. I'm igniting something bigger, something that gives our community new life. Silence hung in the air like a heavy fog. The CEO studied Jake, his expression unreadable. You think you can change things? Jake nodded firmly. I know I can. I'm not just a janitor, I'm a father, a mentor, and a voice for our youth. I will not be silenced. They want to be overlooked. The CEO leaned forward, the barrier between them lessening just a fraction. And what do you expect to gain from this little show of defiance? Respect, Jake answered without hesitation. For myself, for my son, and for everyone who believes they cannot rise from their circumstances. If you can't respect that, then perhaps you need to reconsider your priorities. A flicker of surprise crossed the CEO's face before he masked it with a smirk. You have guts, I'll give you that. But it's going to take more than determination to make a difference here. Jake took a deep breath, seeing a glimmer of opportunity. Then let us work together. I want to recommend programs that can better support our students, connect with their needs in real time. Help me keep those doors open, and I promise I won't let you down. The room swelled with uncertainty. Jake felt his heart pounding in his chest, hoping he hadn't pushed too far. For a moment, the CEO remained silent, deep in thought. I suppose I can consider this. But what if you don't? Jake interjected, startling himself. What happens to those kids? What happens to the town? The door swung open behind Jake, and in walked Lucas, dread on his face. Dad, I've been looking everywhere for you. Jake turned, clenching his fist tight for a moment, knowing his son was witnessing a battle he had fought against himself for so long. I'm right here, buddy. He managed to say with a calm he didn't feel. What's going on? You look intense. Jake turned back to the CEO, who wore a contemplative expression, and Jake's lights flickered with possibility. It's going to be okay, Lucas. We're making change. And then, he couldn't help but wonder, were they really on the brink of something new, or would it all slip away like moments before? The stakes hung perilously high, a tangled web of hope and fear. Would he find what he was searching for? Just as the tension peaked, the CEO finally spoke, leaving Jake on the edge, but what came next would decide everything. The CEO finally broke the silence, leaning forward with a mixture of curiosity and annoyance. All right, he said slowly, weighing the gravity of the conversation. Let us say we do this. What's your plan? Jake's mind raced. He had rehearsed this moment in his head 1,000,000 times. I have ideas, he said, his voice steady. We can create after-school programs tailored to the kids who need it most. Mentorship opportunities that could bridge the gap between their potential and the resources available to them. The CEO rubbed his chin, a flicker of interest igniting in his eyes. And you think a janitor, excuse me, a mentor can make those connections? Absolutely, Jake replied passionately. I'm already doing it, but I need your support. Together, we can turn this place into a haven for these kids. It doesn't matter what title I have, it's about getting results. Lurking behind Jake, Lucas watched intently, his young features scrunching up in contemplation. He felt the weight of the moment, and the uncertainty that accompanied it. Would his dad's ambition crumble under the pressures of a world that often seemed stacked against them? The CEO straightened, clearly contemplating the impact of Jake's words. You really believe this is the answer? he asked, skepticism still creeping into his tone. Not just believe, Jake pressed on, finding the thread of enthusiasm that had fueled his vision from the beginning. I know it. These kids are capable. Just give them a chance, and they will thrive. I've seen it happen up close. Lucas moved closer, nudging his father's arm. Dad, you're making a difference, he said, his voice surprisingly confident for a boy his age. You've helped so many kids. We can't just give up now. Jake looked down at his son, feeling a swell of pride uplift his spirit. Lucas was right. They couldn't give up now. He turned back to the CEO, grounding himself in the hope that had ignited so many of his late-night conversations, the spark that could light a fire within the community. Give me 6 months, Jake said, determination coursing through him like electricity. Let us pilot these programs, see if we can truly make a difference. If it doesn't work, I'll walk away. You won't owe me anything. The CO's expression shifted. Though he still wore an air of superiority, Jake noticed the tension in his shoulders easing just a bit. Fine, the CEO replied, a begrudging respect weaved into his begrudging tone. You have 6 months to prove that your so-called ideas can actually work. But don't make me regret this. I won't, Jake promised, his heart racing with the magnitude of what lay ahead. Thank you? As the CEO turned back to his paperwork, the heaviness from the conversation began melting away. Jake felt lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. Turning to Lucas, he knelt down, pulling him into a tight hug. We did it, buddy. We might just have a chance. I knew you could do it, Dad, Lucas beamed. You're a hero. Jake smiled, his heart swelling with warmth. Yet, a whisper of anxiety flickered at the edge of his mind. It wasn't over yet, not by a long shot. They still had to prove themselves, still had to face the challenges that lay ahead. As they walked out of the office together, Lucas peering up at Jake with bright eyes, a sudden noise echoed through the hall. A commotion erupted in the staff lounge a few doors down. They paused, uncertain. What's that? Lucas asked, curiosity piqued. Jake's heart raced anew. Let's find out, he said, leading the way cautiously. With every step they approached the commotion, Jake felt a knot tightening in his gut. Could this be trouble? Or perhaps, was it the opportunity he never expected to face, the one that could change everything for him and the kids he fought so hard for? The uncertainty loomed like a dark cloud as they reached the door, and just as Jake prepared to peek inside, he wondered what awaited them beyond the threshold. Jake hesitated, his heart pounding as he leaned closer to the door. The noise inside was chaotic, voices rising and falling as if a storm raged just beyond the wooden frame. He took a breath, rehearsing the confidence he had just mustered. With one firm grip on the doorknob, he pushed it open. Inside, the staff lounge was a flurry of movement. Faces contorted with concern and confusion surrounded a table, where a group of employees had huddled together, their eyes wide with disbelief. Jake scanned the scene quickly and felt a jolt of dread when he noticed Sarah, one of the teachers he often worked with in the after-school programs. Her hands were gripping the edges of the table, turning white from the pressure. What's going on? Jake asked, stepping inside and signaling Lucas to stay right beside him. Sarah's eyes darted to Jake, her expression shifting from panic to relief. Jake. It's Kevin, she stammered, urgency filling her voice. He collapsed during the meeting. We think before she could finish, a murmur swept through the room like wildfire as a paramedic team burst in from the hallway. The atmosphere in the lounge turned heavy, a palpable tension settling over everyone as they rushed toward Kevin, a fellow janitor well known for his cheerful demeanor and contagious laughter. Jake's stomach twisted. He and Kevin often shared short chats, exchanging stories and smiles as they cleaned up after the long days. Kevin had always found ways to brighten up the darker corners of the job. Is he going to be okay? A voice cried out, breaking through the thick silence that had descended after the paramedics rushed in. Jake's eyes searched his son, who stood wide-eyed at his side. I don't know, buddy, but let us hope, he whispered, trying to project confidence while his heart dwindled with worry. The paramedics went straight to work, checking for vital signs and shouting orders to each other, the urgency amplifying the tension. Jake's breath came fast and shallow. In this moment, the world around him faded. All he could focus on was Kevin. Suddenly, a thought struck him: what if Kevin didn't pull through? What if their conversations, their aspirations, faded like whispers in the wind? Dad? Lucas's small voice snapped Jake back to the present. He looked down, finding his son's eyes brimming with concern. Lucas had always been perceptive, absorbing the emotional waves like a sponge. Is Kevin going to be okay? He repeated, his voice tinged with fear. Jake knelt down to his son's level, holding his shoulders firm but gentle. I don't know yet, Lucas. But the paramedics are here. They're the best at this. They stood together, their small moment of connection amid the frantic energy. Deep down, Jake felt the reality of life's fragile nature. It could shift in an instant. The hope he clung to felt like sand slipping through his fingers with every rushing heartbeat. Just then, one of the paramedics called for assistance. The room held its breath as they carefully placed Kevin onto the stretcher, his face pale yet peaceful. The collective sigh of the staff mingled with an overwhelming desire to help, to do something, anything, to keep him with them. As they wheeled Kevin out, a thought flickered in Jake's mind. This could push him forward. If he could galvanize the community now, stand firm through adversity, it would demonstrate resilience. Lucas, we need to be strong for him, Jake said, pulling his son tight against him. This is the very reason we need to fight harder for our kids. We need something to rally around. Suddenly, determination etched a line across Jake's face. As the doors closed behind the paramedics, the distant sounds of sirens began to fade into the rhythm of his racing heart. Could this tragedy transform into a catalyst for change, the urgency that the community needed to embrace support and hope for one another? But even as possibilities fluttered in his mind, a question loomed larger than hope: what if this was just the beginning of unforeseen challenges ahead? With uncertainty lingering in the air, Jake knew they had to move swiftly. Could he truly mobilize the community in Kevin's honor? Would they unite, or would they falter, afraid to lose what they couldn't bear? Every heartbeat echoed his resolve as he stood at the crossroads of compassion and action. This was becoming more than a mission, this was personal now. The journey was set to unfold, and Jake could almost see the path beginning to shimmer through the darkness. The sirens faded into the distance, but the tension in the staff lounge hung thick in the air. Jake looked around at his colleagues, faces pale and drawn, murmurs of disbelief echoing softly as they processed what had just happened. It was a wake-up call, a sudden reminder of how swiftly things could change and how fragile their sense of normalcy really was. Jake, we need to talk, Sarah said, her voice urgent but trembling. She stepped closer, her eyes searching his for an answer. We can't let Kevin's situation be unrecognized. His hard work, his spirit, it deserves something more, something that brings us together. Jake nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle onto his shoulders. You're right. We can't just let this happen and walk away like nothing changed. A fire kindled inside him, fueled by the grief strangling the air. Kevin had given so much. Now, it was time for them to give back. Let us organize something, Jake suggested, glancing over at Lucas, who was quiet now, processing everything. A fundraiser maybe, to help with his medical bills. We could reach out to the community, get local businesses involved. Something to rally around for him. A spark of hope ignited in the room, and murmurs turned to nods of agreement. Faces softened with a shared purpose, the fears that had gripped them just moments ago momentarily released. They rallied together, pooling ideas and resources, speaking over one another with excitement and urgency. It felt good to feed off one another's determination, to act instead of sink into despair. Lucas tugged on Jake's sleeve. Can I help, Dad? His eyes lit up, fierce with a newfound sense of involvement. I want to do something too. Jake smiled down at him, pride swelling in his chest. Absolutely, buddy. Let us get you involved. We'll need volunteers to help with organizing and maybe even some entertainment to draw people in. You can be my right-hand man. His son grinned, and Jake felt the warmth of possibility wrap around them. Maybe this moment of fear could spark change. If they dared to push forward, to shake off the weight of sadness, they could create something beautiful. Something that would honor Kevin's spirit. As they began drafting plans, Jake's heart raced at the thought of what this could achieve. He imagined the community coming together, neighbors meeting one another, families and friends sharing laughter and stories in the midst of a common goal. Wouldn't that be the perfect tribute to Kevin? A gathering of strength in the face of adversity, but a cloud of doubt crept in, tugging at the edges of his enthusiasm. Would they really show up? Would they care enough to unite for one person? The past echoed loudly in his mind, a chorus of missed connections and opportunities left unspoken. Sarah, do you think we can really pull this off? Jake asked, his voice low but hopeful. Absolutely, she replied, her conviction piercing through Jake's skepticism. We can make this happen. It's not just about Kevin either. It's about us, about our community together. We have to believe in it. As they drafted flyers and ideas, laughter returned, mingling with the overwhelming sense of purpose. The doubts still loomed, but they felt smaller beneath the weight of hope shared among the group. With hearts and minds focused, they set a date to meet again. Each passing minute felt charged with anticipation. But in the back of Jake's mind, a question nagged him. Would the courage to act be enough to bring this community together? Would this fundraiser mark the beginning of a new bond, or would they remain just a part, victims of challenges still to come? As the group dispersed, Jake stood in the empty staff lounge, a mixture of hope and fear swirling inside him. The road ahead seemed daunting, yet unexpectedly clear. In that moment, he knew they had to be ready because the true test was just beginning. And outside, under the sky where the sun was setting, Jake took a deep breath, wondering if they would all rise together like the embers of a fire, glowing bright enough to light the way forward. The next day dawned with the sun's rays breaking through the clouds, casting a warm glow over the school. Jake stood at his kitchen table, a hastily scribbled list of ideas for the fundraiser sprawled out before him. Lucas was across from him, eagerly sketching designs for flyers. Jake couldn't help but smile as he watched his son doodle stars and balloons, the innocence of childhood shining through even in the shadow of uncertainty. How about a bake sale too? Lucas suggested, his brow furrowed with concentration. Everyone loves cookies and cakes. We could have a contest. His eyes sparkled at the thought, and moments like these reminded Jake of why pushing through the tough times mattered. That sounds perfect, Jake replied, his excitement igniting anew. We can ask Ms. Thompson to run it. She makes the best chocolate chip cookies. But we'll need more than just sweets. We need to think about entertainment too. Maybe a local band or something? As they brainstormed, a sense of community started bubbling inside Jake like the warm coffee filling his cup. He could almost see it, the schoolyard bustling with families, laughter echoing, everyone coming together for Kevin, for each other. Just the thought brought a lump to his throat. Later that day, the meeting was buzzing with energy. Sarah had rounded up a small team, the science teacher, Ms. Bennett, who had a knack for organizing events, and Mr. Adams, the PE teacher, always a source of motivation and charisma. Their enthusiasm was infectious. We can set up booths, games for kids, and even a dunk tank. Who doesn't want to see Mr. Collins get soaked? Ms. Bennett proposed with a wink, her laughter contagious. Count me in for that. Jake laughed, picturing their normally composed principal splashing into cold water. As they exchanged ideas morphed into plans. Flyers were drafted, volunteers recruited, and commitments flowed in from local businesses, offering donations and support. It was a turning point, each yes building a mosaic of cooperation that promised to ripple far beyond the school's walls. But with every stride made, Jake felt the weight of Kevin's absence tugging at his heart. He envisioned his friend, always ready with a smile, now fighting battles behind closed doors. It was a stark reminder of what they were rallying for, a mission to uplift not just a colleague, but a friend whose courage inspired them all. With the planning nearly underway, Jake found a quieter moment to take stock. He stepped outside, hoping the fresh air would clear his mind. He closed his eyes and thought about the upcoming event. It wasn't just a mere fundraiser anymore. It was something bigger. It was a way to foster a true sense of belonging, to bridge the gaps forged by isolation. As the sun dipped low, attaching vibrant hues to the horizon, a thought struck Jake. What would their actions see reflected back? Would they be able to pull this off? Would the community rise to the occasion, ready to contribute? He stood in that moment, embracing the uncertainty, feeling alive with hope. With Lucas at his side, laughing about some silly joke, they were stepping into a new possibility. He realized that this experience could transform them all, perhaps even himself, and as Jake glanced back towards the school, he could sense that anticipation hung thick in the air, a promise intertwined with nervous energy. He felt like they were all standing at the edge of something monumental, ready to leap. He took Lucas's hand, squeezing it tightly. Are you ready for this? Yeah. Let us make it amazing. Lucas beamed, his spirit encouraging Jake to push past any fears. But would this collective effort truly unite them? Would they uncover a community thread that had long been hidden? As the day turned to evening, Jake's heart raced with that familiar mix of excitement and fear. One question lingered, echoing in his mind. When it came time to gather, would everyone show up as they needed them to? Only time would tell. The days quickly turned into a blur. With each passing moment, the excitement for the fundraiser built like a crescendo. Jake and Lucas devoted every free hour to the preparations. The two of them made flyers, distributed them around the neighborhood, and even visited local businesses to gather support. Their bond deepened with each shared laugh and late-night brainstorming session, building something far bigger than either had anticipated. One afternoon, as they nailed flyers to trees outside the school, a familiar voice called out to them. It was Mrs. Miller, an elderly neighbor who had always been a beacon of kindness in the community. "What's all this, boys?" she asked, her hands clasped in front of her apron. "A fundraiser for Mr. Barnes," Jake replied, feeling pride swell in his chest. "To help him while he is sick." Mrs. Miller's expression softened. "Oh, Kevin, such a good man. I'd love to help. How about I bake some pies for the bake sale? And perhaps I can make my famous apple crisp." Jake's heart soared. "Absolutely. Thank you, Mrs. Miller." The thought of those warm, homemade dishes being shared filled him with gratitude and further ignited the spirit of community. As word spread, more people began to show their support. One by one, people approached Jake on the street or sent him messages through social media. A neighbor offered their lawn space for games, another volunteered to set up chairs, and someone even created a Facebook event to spread the word further. But amid this whirlwind of support, shadows of doubt crept into Jake's mind. Was it enough? He knew Kevin's medical bills would be heavy, and concern burned deeply within him. He walked home one evening, the cool breeze swirling leaves around his feet. "Dad, look at this cool idea!" Lucas exclaimed, pulling out a sketch of a giant cardboard cutout of a superhero, Kevin's favorite movie character. "We can take photos with him. Everyone will love it." Jake couldn't help but smile, but there was a flicker of worry in his chest. "That's great, buddy. But what if it doesn't turn out like we hope?" Lucas looked up, his eyes full of innocence and determination. "But Dad, we're doing our best. And our best is all we can do." His words hit home. Jake nodded slowly. With every yes from the community, they weren't just hoping for success. They were building connections, giving love, and showing Kevin that he mattered. As the big day approached, Jake felt the weight of anticipation. The schoolyard buzzed with activity, last-minute preparations seemed to multiply. He and Lucas had worked hard, but there was an underlying tension as they awaited the moment when the community would come together. The morning of the event dawned bright and clear, laughter and excitement billowing in the air. As Jake stood at the entrance, watching families filter in, a tremor of nerves pulsed through him. Would the turnout be what they needed? And as he turned to look for Lucas, needing a reminder of their shared hope, he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Sarah, her face glowing. "Jake, look! We have a crowd!" Jake turned, and a wave of emotion hit him. He saw families with children, friends, laughter and openness filling the yard. Kevin's spirit seemed to pulse through the air like a heartbeat. They had done this together. "Are you ready for this?" Sarah asked, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. Jake nodded, but a question lingered in his mind. Would this wave of hope reverberate deep enough to reach Kevin and lift him back up when he needed it most? Just then, amidst the cheerful chaos, he caught sight of a familiar figure approaching in the distance. Would Kevin, their beloved friend and colleague, really make it to this moment? The answer hung in the balance, waiting for revelation. The excitement in the air was palpable, like electricity ready to spark a fire. Families were laughing, children were running, and the smell of baked goods wafted through the yard. Jake stood frozen for a moment, caught between anxiety and a rush of hope. His eyes searched the crowd for Kevin, heart pounding as he recalled their conversations and the laughs they had shared before illness took hold. As more people arrived, he felt a hand slip into his. It was Lucas, bubbling with joy. "Look at them, Dad. They're here for Mr. Barnes." His enthusiasm was contagious. Jake squeezed his son's hand, drawing comfort from the small gesture. They both knew that this day was more than just a fundraiser. It was a celebration of their community's love and resilience. "Hey, Jake!" shouted a voice from the crowd. It was Mr. Varma from down the street, carrying a cooler filled with drinks. "I figured I'd contribute a little refreshment. You boys ready for this?" "Absolutely," Jake called back, his heart lifting. Each addition to the gathering was like a step toward fulfilling their goal. They weren't just hoping for success anymore, they were living it. Jake turned, catching a glimpse of Mrs. Miller weaving through the crowd, her arms filled with freshly baked pies. She smiled broadly and waved. Just then, a rustle in the distance caught his attention. Jake followed Lucas's gaze as he pointed. There, the familiar figure of Kevin emerged, supported by his wife, Lisa. Kevin's face shone with surprise, his eyes wide as if catching a glimpse of a long-lost dream. "Jake!" he called out, his voice hoarse but full of warmth. A wave of relief washed over Jake. He was here. Lucas took off running toward him, his small legs moving fast and unencumbered by doubt. "Mr. Barnes, look! We made a superhero cutout for you!" he exclaimed, bubbling with excitement, as if he were revealing a grand secret. Jake watched as Kevin leaned down, his eyes glistening with emotion. "You both have no idea how much this means to me," he said, voice heavy with gratitude. Jake felt a lump rise in his throat, the community's effort reflected in Kevin's smile. As laughter floated around them, Jake and Sarah exchanged a glance that said it all. They had built this together. But as the day unfolded, the buzzing activity felt mixed with an undercurrent of fragility. The reality of Kevin's battle with illness loomed like a shadow, whispering reminders hidden beneath the laughter. "Hey, remember that game I told you about?" Lucas's voice broke into the thoughtful silence. "The pie-eating contest. We're gonna start that soon. You should totally join in, Mr. Barnes." His earnestness brought a lightness that pierced through the somber thoughts. Kevin chuckled softly, a real smile breaking through the fatigue etched in his features. "All right, I'll give it a try." Jake watched as people gathered, friends and neighbors chatting, children racing about. He took a deep breath, absorbing the moment, the vibrant energy blending into something beautiful. Yet, outside the borders of the joyful chaos, doubt still nagged at his mind. Would they really be able to raise enough to cover Kevin's needed expenses? The thought simmered in his mind as he caught snippets of laughter and shouts from the makeshift stage where local musicians played. Each note felt like a heartbeat, echoing the rhythm of a community coming together. And then came the unexpected. A group of teenagers approached kids who had once seemed distant and disinterested all summer long. "Hey, we want to help," one said, stepping forward. His face was serious yet hopeful. "Can we do a little performance for donation?" Jake's heart raced. This was what his friend and neighbor needed, people rallying together, meeting disappointment and despair with unity and action. But just as he began to feel the twinge of hope, a loud crash erupted nearby, causing Jake's stomach to drop. Someone had knocked into the table filled with baked goods, pies tumbling to the ground. The atmosphere shifted instantly, confusion sparking through the crowd. Jake's heart raced. Would this throw them off? Would it be too much for Kevin to witness? As he rushed toward the commotion, determination surged within him. He had to keep this momentum alive for Kevin. What if this one moment could change everything, pulling a thread of hope through a fabric that felt frayed? And then, amid the rising tide of chaos, Jake wondered, could they recover from this? Was this just a setback or the very thing that would rally their community even more? As he dove in to help, one thought lingered. They weren't just in this for the money anymore. They were in it to show Kevin that hope could fight alongside him. Jake sprinted toward the chaos, adrenaline pumping through his veins. The sight of crushed pies scattered across the grass tugged at his heart. This wasn't just about desserts. It was about the hard work and love that had gone into every single one of those treats. He dropped to his knees, his hands sifting through the mess. "Hey, what happened?" he called out to the teen who had inadvertently caused the disaster. The kid stood frozen, wide-eyed, clutching a few hastily drawn flyers for the performance. "I'm so sorry. I didn't see the table," the teen exclaimed, panic coursing through his voice. A wave of compassion washed over Jake. "You didn't mean it. Just help me clean up," Jake replied, offering a reassuring smile. It was just like life, sometimes messy and unexpected. He stood up, glancing around at the crowd, who were slowly gathering, some helping, others gasping in disbelief. As he pieced together what was salvageable, more hands joined. Mrs. Miller showed up with a steady resolve, offering a stack of napkins. "Let us make the best of it, shall we?" she said, her eyes sparkling with determination. That contagious spirit spread through the group. Kevin watched from a distance, his smile returning as he saw how quickly the community rushed to help. "You're teaching these kids something they'll never forget," Lisa whispered to him. Kevin nodded, touched by the sight of unity unfolding in front of him. "Lucas!" Jake called out. His son dashed over to help, ready to do whatever was needed. Together, they collected pie crusts and splattered fillings, laughing at the mishaps, trying to lighten the mood. "I bet the kids would love to do a pie fight next year," Lucas said, grinning. "Maybe next year's event will involve less mess," Jake teased, ruffling his son's hair. But within him, hope ignited again. This could be a rallying point rather than a setback. The commotion eventually died down, and amid the splintered mess on the ground, Jake noticed several families had begun to gather around them, drawn in by the spectacle. Young eyes watched like they were at a theater. Then, a surprising thing happened. Someone began to clap. Then another. Soon, the scattered families were clapping, laughter erupting again amidst the sadness of the fallen pies. The energy shifted. The air thickened with joy instead of despair. Kevin took a step closer, filled with emotion, and called out, "You know, every great hero has a sidekick. I'll be the pie guy, but I need some partners in crime." He smiled at Lucas and the others nearby. "Maybe we can hold a pie contest, who can toss the best without dropping it? Or the best thrown at someone." Lucas shouted and erupted into laughter. It felt like everything shifted. What began as a disaster became a shared memory. The teenagers, who once seemed distant, were now fully engaged, buzzing with ideas and laughter. The performance from earlier meant a rhythm of music soon filled the gaps in conversation and noise. Jake could hardly believe his eyes. This community was born of something greater than simple charity. It was a family. They had come together to lift Kevin up, but in doing so, they lifted each other. When the performance began, the teen who had initiated it took the stage nervously, but when he began to play his guitar, the crowd quieted. Everyone listened, wrapped in the sound of hope, laughter, and the enduring spirit of togetherness. As songs filled the air, Jake turned to Kevin. There was life in his eyes, more than he had seen in weeks. "I think today might just be the start of something beautiful," Jake said. Kevin looked at him, gratitude radiating from his gaze. "I can feel it." The music, laughter, and the smell of triumph filled the yard. Jake's heart raced as he glimpsed his son's beaming face amidst the crowd. But just as they were settling into this new rhythm, another deep crack hurried through the yard. A large gathering of storm clouds rolled in above them. It looked ominous, ready to upend the good they had built. Looks like we might need to move things inside, Jake murmured to Kevin, worry creeping back in. Would the rain wash away the moments they had just created, or would it only strengthen the bond they had forged? Jake glanced at Lucas, still dancing, unaware of the looming storm. And he wondered, would they endure yet another test of faith and community? As the first drops of rain began to fall, Jake felt the tension seep back into his veins. The laughter that had just begun to reverberate through the gathered crowd faced a sudden test. Families glanced at one another, uncertainty filling the air. Jake stood at a crossroads. Should they try to continue this excitement indoors or brave the storm, risking everything they had built together? Everyone! Gather around! Jake called out, rallying the thinning crowd like a commander-in-chief. Lucas, ever enthusiastic, continued to spin in circles as he waved a makeshift cape made from a pie tin, totally absorbed in the spirit of the day. Let us bring this inside. Jake's voice cut through the drizzling rain, and as he gestured towards the school gym, an excited murmur surged through the crowd. One by one, they moved through the pouring rain, laughter mingling with the sounds of falling droplets, as umbrellas opened up like blooming flowers. The storm felt like a pulse, rising and falling with each step they took. The crowd's energy didn't dim. Instead, it transformed. Laughter grew louder as they squished through puddles, enlivening a sense of camaraderie that Jake hadn't seen before. Once inside the gym, the atmosphere seemed electric. The warm scent of baked goods wafted through the air alongside the distant echoes of rain hitting the windows. Families arranged tables, drying off as they transformed the space into a sanctuary of warmth and unity. All right, let us keep the music going. Jake smiled, seeing the local band take a spot near the makeshift stage crafted from old crates. They launched into a lively tune that immediately brought families together, clapping and swaying as joy radiated through the room. Dad, we're saving the superhero until later, right? Lucas said, eyes shining in anticipation. Absolutely, he'll become our mascot for today. Jake laughed, feeling a new surge of warmth swell through him. Kevin wandered through the crowd, beaming at the unity surrounding him. He leaned down to whisper to Jake, "You've done something incredible here. This is what community is all about." In that moment, Jake felt the weight of admiration lift, replaced by purpose. "We didn't just do this for you, Kevin. It's bigger than that. It's about togetherness, pulling each other up." Throughout the gym, people mingled, sharing stories, recalling moments of joy, and confronting fears they never thought they could share. As the band played on, the music grew infectious. Kids began dancing, adults joined in, and soon laughter filled every corner. Jake's thoughts wandered to Kevin's health, the future that loomed uncertainly ahead. He reminded himself that even during stormy seas, they had created a beacon of hope through unity. Then something wonderful happened. A group of high school students who hadn't even joined the fundraiser earlier took to the stage, sharing a song they had covered in honor of Kevin. The rhythm was joyful, filled with emotion, and within moments, the entire gym fell silent, listening. A wave of warmth enveloped Jake as he watched. Sometimes, it took a storm to remind them all of their strength, how strong they could be when united in hope. As their voices echoed against the gym walls, now decorated with colorful banners proudly displaying Kevin's smiling face, Jake turned to Lucas. "Whatever happens next, we did this together." Lucas smiled widely. "Together forever, Dad. Like real superheroes." Jake grinned, placing his arm around Lucas as they swayed to the music, swept along with the current of unity that filled the room. The storm outside had transformed into a gentle rhythm, a reminder of resilience just as much as it was of love. They had crafted not only a fundraiser, but a spark igniting a brighter future for their community. As the finale approached, an overwhelming wave of hope washed over Jake. He felt alive, aware of how vast their dreams could go if they simply upheld the strength they found in each other. And just as they prepared to announce the results of the fundraiser, Kevin stood up, matching smiles with everyone surrounding him. "If I've learned anything through this journey, it's that together we can heal our hearts and build new dreams, regardless of the storms we face." Thunder rumbled faintly, but laughter echoed even louder. As people clapped and cheered, Jake felt a deep sense of belonging settle in his chest. They had turned a day meant for sorrow into something magnificent, and he knew deep within that everything would be alright. As the cheers rang out, definitive and strong, Jake realized profound change was indeed afoot. They could fight through this life together, and emerge stronger on the other side. With every beat of his heart, he felt rejuvenated, ready for whatever challenges awaited them. Now was the time to embrace their shared triumphs and to recognize that the greatest victories lay not within the gifts they raised, but in the love they shared. Their journey had only just begun, and together, they would navigate all storms that came their way. This was not just a chapter in their lives. It was an open book waiting to be written with stories of hope, laughter, and the resolve that united them all. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and feelings about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share.